Welcome to Hyperspace Prospector. I'll be discussing Tempest Runner by Cavan Scott. This was originally designed as an audio drama, so it is a script, not a traditional novel. I absolutely loved it. It is the perfect format for me. I know this particular one has been rather controversial. A lot of people have said they had trouble reading it. I have an advantage. For almost 20 years now, I've been in audio drama. I've done everything. I've been a voice actor many times. I have written audio dramas. I had two just come out this month alone. I have directed them occasionally. I have done just special effects for them, which is super fun. You get to run around with a camera out in the woods and record yourself walking on different surfaces. Love it. So this flowed perfectly for me. This is where I'm comfortable. To be honest, sometimes I struggle with regular novels. This is my jam. I've been in all these roles, like as a voice actor. I know how to follow these instructions. For example, Scott recommends having a specific sound for each ship and location. This is so important in audio. The audience may never even recognize it, but they will know if it's not there. For example, if the Nihil ship was in the background, there's part of you that will recognize that sound and go, we are on the Nihil ship. Whereas if you're over on the Republic cruiser, could be the background sound. So whenever you hear, you know you're on that cruiser. It's really important to get these clues about your emotions. Seston continues working underneath the following dialogue, becoming more and more angry and frustrated. So a lot of times when you're voice acting, of course you have to be careful of fabric sounds, but you will move as you're speaking. Now you have to be careful that you're still on the mic. But if you're doing things like actively lifting, point yourself at the mic still. You'll get rid of anything that makes sound. And then you'll move as if you are actually lifting stuff. And this will help as you're saying your lines. You also get really good clues like this. Footsteps as Lorna walks through the common area. Quinn comes up on mic, but Lorna keeps walking. So if you're doing the mixing on this, you'll be thinking through, all right, Lorna is formidable as a character, but she's probably not heavy-footed. And she's a prisoner right now, so she's probably not wearing heavy boots. You're not going to do clank, clank, clank on a metal surface. You're going to be looking for an effect that is a little bit lighter. Regular shoes, maybe, or soft-soled shoes on a metal surface, like a grate. Clink, 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 clink. She's also slightly annoyed, so she's probably walking a little bit fast. Clink, 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 clink is what you're going to add in. You're not going to be like boom, boom. And when you're used to making these quick decisions, again, while you're reading, you're able to hear it. And it just keeps going. You'll hear the walking through the scene until you get to the part that says, she sits, her bed creaking. So then the walking stops. You hear the as the bed creaks. Maybe a little tiny bit of a fabric sound. If I was mixing it, I'd add a tiny fabric sound in there as she's sitting down, getting comfortable. But just heads up, that's what you're getting into. I wish all the novels were written in this format, honestly. I liked it so much. But we've had a lot of complaints, so on to the actual story. This was great. It was exactly what I wanted, just background on Lorna D. How did she become the way she is? I love her because I am working on a Nihil Twi'lek cosplay. Not of her specifically, but of another Twi'lek Nihil. I didn't want to deal with the face paint. These were just my running thoughts as I was reading it. There's a lot of scav droids in this. A surprisingly large amount. First of all, I hadn't thought of them as sentient, which seems strange because we are so into droids as Star Wars fans. I just rewatched The Force Awakens over the holidays, and BB-8 has to be the cutest thing ever. It is so easy to look at that big eye and go, oh, of course he's sentient. This pointed out, so are scav droids. I mean, our reaction as Star Wars fans when we see one is just like, oh, shoot it. And up until now in the High Republic, that's pretty much been everyone's reaction. Jedi, non-Jedi, you see one, you blast it. They're just doing their job. And they are just like any other droid. And that kind of blew my mind. I was not ready to think of scav droids in that way, and I found that quite challenging. And it was a good wake-up call that I had just been kind of prejudging them. Now, obviously, yeah, sometimes you gotta blast them. But first, like any other droid, we should always try to save them. Why did Ahsoka escape Order 66? Because she befriended the droids, and when she needed help, they were there for her. On the other end, the scene where the scav droids are chasing them down corridors of the ship, ripping people limb from limb who aren't fast enough, has made it into my top 5 most terrifying corridor scenes in Star Wars. And there's some pretty scary ones. We've got Darth Vader in Rogue One. We've got Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian. Din Djarin as well in Mandalorian, in that scene on the prison ship where the lights go in and out and he's closer every time and it's full horror. Darth Maul in the corridor in Clone Wars where he's ripping walls apart. This one is up there. It was so visceral. I'm glad no one was around because I was like, I think that might have been my favorite part of the book. I don't think I would have made it through if this was live action. I would have just been under blankets, screaming. So, well done. Obviously, we get to see a lot more behind the scenes of the Nihil, which I always find fascinating. They have an interesting philosophy that, this is embarrassing, I don't entirely disagree with. For example, there's a saying that the Jedi just don't get and are very confused by. Attack one of us, and you attack us all. If you come after any of the queer, LGBTQIA, any of them, you come after me. And I will stand for what's right. I fall under lesbian and I fall under gray ace. But I don't care who's being attacked, what law is being passed against any of the queer community. You come after all of us. And we will stand with you. And that's the kind of sentiment that I totally get. And the fact that the Jedi don't is quite frankly concerning. They're like off in their little idealist la la land sometimes. And they need to be reminded about the reality of the galaxy. And we've seen this in Clone Wars as well, where the Jedi are just like off up here doing stuff. And they forget what it's like on the ground. Stellan, I love him. We all love him. I'm still salty about Fallen Star. Even he forgot. In the Life Day book, which I of course reread during this holiday season, there's a story where he comes after this kid who's stealing stuff. And he intends to, slam down the full, I'm a Jedi, this is justice. But something tells him, wait, follow this kid home first. And he discovers that this kid is being terrorized by a gang. His family is sick and can't afford medicine. That he's sleeping on the floor with almost nothing to eat. And Stellan comes barging in his full temple robes and everything. And he looks around and is like, am I the baddie? And he stops, completely pivots what he's doing, and ends up helping this kid. And so the point of all this is that sometimes the Jedi need a slap in the face reminder that the galaxy works differently than the Order. And part of why we got this Nihil conflict versus the Jedi is because of that, and because the Jedi were not looking and they were not being as compassionate as they talked about being. So many of the Nihil, like we see here with Lorna, went through absolute Tartarus, and they were not helped. And they had a choice to become a survivor or to let it crush them. And Lorna D decided, I will survive. And I will do whatever it takes, and I will trust no one. Because we see here, she was betrayed multiple times by people she trusted and loved. And when that happens to you, it is almost impossible to trust anyone after that. And what makes it worse is that everyone who reached out to her after that, which we see in this story, was doing so for selfish reasons. I really like the ending. She kind of trusts someone for the last time. A woman who I think is capable of deep love. But every time she gives it, her heart is ripped away and shattered to the point where she stops giving it. And we get to watch all this happen. And it is heart-wrenching, this story. She would have been a hero. We see flashes of it. And of course, in High Republic, she's become a villain. But this explains why. And really, I get it. I don't know if I would have made any different choices than she would, given the circumstances that she had. I think if you really examine this, would you have done any different than her? One thing that really hit hard for me is Whittick takes Lorna aside and accuses her of being difficult to work with, even though he has just told her that she's doing everything at a skill level above all the other prisoners, because the prisoners in the Republic here are expected to work. Basically the same as the Empire. In the same breath, he's like, you're doing a really skillful job, and you're actually doing a way better job than everyone else. Why are you being so difficult? And she's like, dude, I am doing everything you're asking me to do. I am following your silly little rules. You just admitted I'm doing a good job. Why are you after me? Why are you dragging me aside to yell at me about being difficult? It is so accurate to real life. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you work and how perfectly you do your job, they irrationally get this idea lodged in their head that you're difficult to work with because you think differently than they do. Well, newsflash, look at the clones. Even the clones aren't they're very different personalities. Obviously, in real life, you can't just stab someone and steal a ship and fly off into the galaxy. That's unfortunately not an option like she did. One thing I really appreciate about Star Wars, and I was actually, again, rewatching Force Awakens, like Rey does all this work. She comes back, she scrubs stuff clean, she brings it in, and he's like, 1/4 portion. Like, come on! Why is the world like this? Star Wars doesn't show us what the universe ought to be. It shows us how it is. This is no different. Lorna points out that the Republic encourages bullies, and she despises bullies. My takeaway from this, the Republic wasn't much different than the Empire. I know the rebellion was all about, let's bring back the Republic. Was it worth bringing back? This is why the New Republic failed. It's just too similar to the Empire. Old Republic, High Republic, New Republic. Empire, First Order. Different names, same problem. And the Nihil recognized that. Now, obviously, their solution was even worse. I am not advocating for the Nihil. What they're doing is wrong and awful. I'm just saying that this book in particular really shows why they're doing it. Another thing that hit hard was the fact that Lorna's father did not really care about her. There's a scene in it early on, young Lorna, where she gets badly injured. Helena tells her, "Let's get you to the infirmary. Father is going to be furious." And Lorna responds, "Doubt it. That would mean he cares." Yep, that's typical fathers. The overall theme and tone of this reminds me of Andor. So if you enjoyed that show, you'll probably enjoy this book. If you are not used to reading audio drama scripts, though, probably listen to the actual audio drama. Don't try to read it. The scene where Lorna becomes a Tempest Runner, thus the name of the book, is incredibly memorable. And oh, wow, the special effects in that scene were probably quite extreme. In fact, I think I have some because I did some zombie audio dramas and I have some great effects. So let me see. I will put one in right now of this is the scene where Lorna becomes a Tempest Runner. Yep. What's really fun too are the little tidbits of special effects notes. We actually have a written out insert Wilhelm scream here for a background Nihil. That gave me a good laugh. You gotta have it in there somewhere. And at this point, we all know what it is, so it's instantly comedic. And you just have to be careful when you put it in, that it is in a funny moment. You don't want to put it in a serious scene because it instantly becomes not serious. I can't speak to the actual audio drama that was produced because I read the book, but I could hear it. And if they did half of what I was hearing, it'll be fantastic. Unfortunately, I can read way faster than I can listen to things, so I'm team reading it. And I'll leave you with a line that basically sums up her character. When people keep trying to fix her and get her back on the right path, it's never about me. It's always about what I can do for them. This is a great example where I went online and every single person I talked to hated this book. Don't listen to people. I know I'm saying that literally as someone reviewing it right now. Don't listen to us. We can give you hints. We can give you clues. Read it and decide for yourself because I adore this book. It's probably one of my top Star Wars novels now. And it's proof that had I listened to all the other Star Wars reviewers out there who were like, "This is awful, I couldn't get through more than a chapter," doesn't necessarily apply to you. So don't assume just because you hear all bad about something that it's bad. They're just not the target audience. I was the target audience. A voice actor. And if you read this and you're like, "This was awful, what were you talking about, Alexa?" That's okay. For light and life. Or should I say, in this case, ride the storm.